Welcome back, listeners and viewers, to part 3 of our special edition book study. Part of the Enthusiasm is Our Jam podcast. You can, of course, find all of these episodes of this podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. This is, again, part 3 of our book study, and we'll be taking a deeper dive into chapters 4 and 5 of the book Getting to Neutral by Trevor Moawad. I'm going to quick share my screen here the correct way since I didn't do it correctly a few attempts ago. So once again, part 3, we are getting into chapters 4 and 5. Another reason I absolutely love this book is it's the setup. The first couple chapters talk about what getting to neutral is, and then it slowly gets into kind of strategies for yourself to implement into your own daily life, which I think is really helpful. Rather than just talking about it the whole time, the author shows you how he actually works with his clients on actually doing this for themselves to make an impact on themselves. So joining me today, of course, Kyler Olson, elementary school teacher, Bismarck Public Schools. We are switching up our crowd just a little bit today. Had a few people unable to make it, but adding a few new faces who have actually been on the podcast before. So get a little full circle moments going on. We have Coach Mike Silbernagel, who formerly of the University of Mary in the strength program is now the manager of sports performance at Sanford Sports. Rhonda Olson, athletic trainer up at Sanford Sports, of course, also formerly at the University of Mary, and soon to come, she said she would make it at some point, is Miss Maddie Lund. She is also an elementary school teacher in Bismarck Public Schools. So before we dive in, I want to start off, since we are a few chapters into this thing, I want everybody involved in the podcast to share any thoughts that you have with the book regarding how has this book recently had a positive impact in your personal life, professional life, any aspect of your life that this book has helped you a lot. I know I've mentioned before that the reason I wanted to do this book study is because I've read it a few times previously, and it every year has a large impact on my brain. A lot of good reminders in this with terminology and just ways to take action to help yourself out. But I think I usually don't read this book till the first week of April after I've had a chaotic March. And I will say that I think starting this a little earlier in early February has had a massive impact on my brain in a good way. March is a huge month for myself with, school, have tomorrow, 3-year-old's birthday, my brother's birthday. I have 2 good friends who have birthdays. We have March Madness, we have reading month, so March, and then of course in school, March we're kind of easing our way into and starting to plan for the end of year, which brings a lot of testing with it and just a lot of chaos to come after the month of March. So I will say that starting this book in February, which is earlier than I usually start this book, it's definitely helped me in the pause aspect of, you have 27 things on your to-do list today. What do I need to do now so that I can be successful in 4 hours? What can wait till tomorrow? What can wait for a few days to absolutely be done? So I think the being in the moment and being able to, again, downshift to neutral during a school day especially has been super helpful to my brain, and not being overwhelmed by the what feels like dozens of tasks in front of you, but attacking each one of them one by one in order to be successful in the bigger picture at the end of the day. So I will also ask Coach Silbernagel and Rhonda, any ways that you'd like to share that this book has already, just through chapter 3, had a positive impact on your personal life, professional life, any aspects of your life. I'll start with Coach Silbernagel. Uh-oh, I lost him. There he
There we
is.
go. Am I there? Sorry. Technology issues on a Thursday evening. I think for me it just kind of reaffirmed some of the things that I needed to go back to. You had mentioned, you'd read this book before. I've read similar books. So reading some of the same things and maybe different terminology allowed me to see it through a different lens and maybe re-grasp a little bit of some of those things I've let slide during those busy times, and just get back on track in terms of what I was looking to accomplish.
Rhonda?
Um, I'm gonna have to say I just came off a week of vacation, so I was very neutral there. But prior to that, when we started the book, I think just the reminder of, I just like the fact that it stresses that, you know, a lot of people do say, oh, you have to stay positive, you have to stay positive, and I think I like the neutral idea. I think it makes me approach, kind of daily life a little bit differently. It makes me take a second to think, um, before I make plans. And I do think, like, as far as like getting ready to go on a week vacation, like knocking off my to-do list, I was probably a lot more organized and a lot more task oriented, than sometimes I have been or than I could have been. But one of the things that kind of, well, and I don't know if you want to talk about chapter 5 yet, but um, the one of the things that has stood out to me is that it just because something matters to you doesn't mean it matters to everybody. And I think that's kind of an approach that, um, not just professionally but also personally, I've, like, if I think about that when I'm dealing with people, I think that helps me, because maybe they don't understand what I want or what I'm thinking, and it maybe helps us get to a neutral space together, if that makes sense.
Well, that's good. We're only to chapter 3. Well, technically through 5 after we talk about it today, but for it to impact us, and it hasn't given us too many strategies because we're really not even there yet. So it's good that to see that. So with that, let's dive into this computer. I tell you what. So let's dive into chapter 4. I'm really interested on just the reflections and thoughts on these because we have a massive word right in front of us, culture. You two have both been a part of great cultures. You've been part of cultures that not a whole ton of people may have wanted to be a part of for many reasons that we'll get to. I really liked a lot of the quotes that were in this chapter that talked about culture, what culture is. A big thing that rang in my head was when I was in grad school, my kind of the research I did towards the end revolved around, do positive behavior reinforcements actually work in elementary schools? And a massive piece of that was culture. And I mean, you could talk about culture in every team, every school, every business, everywhere. A lot of that's buy-in, but two of the quotes that I noted in chapter 4 that revolve a lot around culture and even made me think of the cultures I'm part of right now, basically a lot of school. On page 107, a quote from Kobe Bryant, and this has to do a lot of team. What's key when you're determining values with players is that you want them to get to a natural conclusion and not force it upon them. I feel like, I mean, he's talking from a basketball standpoint, and of course, Kobe was a different animal in the culture and the mindset department. But it's tough to relate that for me to the school I'm at because we have 80 plus people, which brings me to my second one: is just because something matters to you doesn't necessarily mean it will matter as much to other people. We just had PD day a few weeks ago, and a big conversation we had as a school because a lot of people think our culture is struggling, which I would lean towards agreeing, but also part of it is um, admin and everyone's trying to make everyone happy with the same thing, and that's not possible when you have 80 staff members. It's impossible to make everyone happy. So a big conversation we are having at our school is some people want what we call the gift of time, where you get more prep time, you get more time for yourself, you get more time to get ready for your students in school. And then other people are over here like, well, I feel like I don't know a lot of my coworkers because we never get time to hang out and just be humans together. And a lot of people don't hang out outside of school unless they're on grade level teams or unless they're friends in general. So we kind of have this, not necessarily a battle because it's not a conflict and it's not an argument in meetings, but having time to ourselves versus having time together and balancing that out, and admin having to try to make everyone happy, as you might imagine, it doesn't go well. So that, again, when people in a school, especially our size, sit in small rooms together and complain that, well, admin doesn't do this for us and admin doesn't do that, it kind of rang in my head that, well, they're trying to make as many people happy at the same time, and it's not possible unless you break them into small groups, instead of doing it big picture. So I obviously that's a massively tough part of culture. But with the Kobe Bryant quote, I think of, I mean, the best programs in the country. They have veterans on them. They have athletes that have been there for years instead of, I mean, we can talk about the transfer portal all day with people being there for 5 months trying to blend in with a culture, and a culture becoming natural and not being forced upon you by some coach that says this works, you need to do it now. So again, so many things can go into culture. You've both been in programs and companies and systems that have great cultures and bad cultures. So let's just again, massive word that could create so many conversations. But Sylvie, I'll start with you. Any thoughts in chapter 4 as we dive into this big word of culture?
Yeah, for starters, I think cultures, everyone thinks they're a static thing. Like once we have this quote on the wall, once we have this, as you mentioned, meeting, or we have this gathering together, that culture is now done, right? It's been said, it's been discussed, and it's over. And cultures are very dynamic. Every day, all the moving pieces of that group, depending on what's going on in their lives, not necessarily just at work, but outside of it, are going to bring a different seasoning to that culture that you may have to uh, work with. So first and foremost, that was one that I thought of. The other one is, I've heard some good coaches say it, that they might come up with what the idea is, but the players have to be the ones that live it, right? So it's the same thing. Um, to me, the challenges in my role, more administrative, is you still have to give direction for the people around you, but you can't shove it down their throat. How can they help move the direction that they want? Are you able to sit in the same room and all agree on the same kind of pizza you should get? I think sometimes would tell you how hard a culture is to have, because someone's going to raise their hand and say, I don't like pizza. So when you think things are going to be easy to develop upon that. But in the chapter itself, one of the statements that I liked, you've touched on it many times, is just because we believe it doesn't mean someone else is. But there's a couple statements that came that, number one is, how can we make it better? Like, it's easy to point fingers as to what's wrong. What are we doing to come up with the different ways to help move the thing forward rather than sitting uh, back and do nothing? And then another statement that I liked is, uh, find out what's important to you and live your life in alignment to it. Right. So when you're talking about your own culture, your own value system, is everything that you're saying and doing matching the words that are coming out of your mouth when you're talking towards other people.
Rhonda, thoughts on culture?
I agree with Sylvie in that it's cultures. I think it's ever evolving. I don't think, and I hate the concept of somebody saying, "Well, this is what our culture is going to be," because I do think you have to figure out who's a part of it and then come up. I did like the components of the the Nick Saban, the Alabama, where they had the words like the perseverance and stuff like that in their table of contents, and then they presented those and they talked about them, and they and people could kind of see where they fit into their values, and then their culture and stuff developed from there, and then they added things like sleep, relaxation, things like that. And I mean, anytime I hear the word culture, I just go back to um, when Craig Bagnell was hired, and that's the one thing that I wasn't upset about it, but the one thing that stood out to me is he kept saying we need to change the culture, and I'm like, well, when he was hired, there was nothing wrong with the culture of our team. We just weren't winning. Like, the culture was great, everybody got along great, everybody was doing everything great. But so sometimes I don't think people understand what culture is, and so I don't really know how to define it, but I think it's like a group of people that are working together towards the same goal. And again, as I think we've all said it, just because it's important to me, it might not be important to the next person. And I think that's where you have to, define your values. And if you have people whose values don't align on your team, then there needs to be a discussion, um, and maybe people meet in the middle. Maybe there's maybe my values aren't totally in line with the organization, but maybe once we sit down and talk about it, our values are more common than what we think.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, like I talked about with graduate school and just every school in America having a slightly different culture based on your demographics, based on number of staff members, and essentially who you need to make happy in a sense, I guess. But I listened to so many college football coaches during the fall talk about, leading up to the season, what's your team look like, this and that, and what's your practice schedule look like, and obviously culture comes up with all of them. But it's so interesting to listen to guys like Ryan Day and Steve Sarkisian and Nick Saban talk about culture, because they're all talking about the same thing, but they're all using different, pieces to it, because it's again depends on what you value and what you want to preach to your guys. There's 100 different things you could preach, but you'd rather be really good at 5 of them than be average at 100 of them. So it's always very interesting to listen to some of those guys who have created and built very successful programs and what those are built on. I know we could talk about guys like John Wooden all day, who are obviously very well known to have great cultures built over time. Another massive piece in chapter 4, and values to goals. I know this is like half of chapter 4. It's very important in the if you want to this book to impact your life, taking a closer glance at your life. Your values lead into your goals, and I'll say obviously all 3 of us who are on this call are married with children, and obviously I'm more recently married in the past couple of years and have 2 young children, so I have definitely watched my values change. I've watched my goals change. I kind of chuckle when I think about Sylvie in this aspect, because I know he's not a big goals guy and he preaches that a lot. But he's kind of a just be better tomorrow than you were. And the more I've kind of thought about it, I'm not a huge goals person either. Lately, I think that has a lot to do with just having kids and having a busy lifestyle. This time of year, I mean, I've been sick, my kids have been sick, my wife's been sick. So it's like, if I want to go work out twice a week, it's probably not going to happen very well right now. So your consistency goes down, your plans change constantly. So I can't really revolve myself around goals. But I know there's another piece that we'll talk about in the next chapter with the aggregate of marginal gains that I love, because I think that's kind of how schools operate as a teacher. But I'll definitely say that my values and goals have certainly not changed drastically, as there's still plenty of things that I value from 7 years ago that I value today. But obviously, when you have, I mean, young children, you guys obviously Rhonda's children are not at her house now, so she doesn't have to worry too much. And Sylvie's children have grown up to where he doesn't have to watch everything they do, or maybe he does, who knows. But
You still
obviously,
worry whether
yeah, this is true. But as I was reading this, like obviously life changes as you first have kids. But I was just thinking about how I kind of made a promise to myself, or not really a promise, but just I needed to get away from technology, because I wasn't afraid to become part of the society that I see every day with being hooked on your phones. And I go to um I mean, student games, and I look around and half the parents maybe they're recording the games on their phones, I don't know, or they're sitting on Facebook and Twitter, I don't know. But I'm like, if I'm going to make the effort to go watch my students play, I'm not going to sit on my phone the whole time. I've been at the Gateway to Science Center with Cohen several times, and some of the workers have literally said, "Oh, you're such a good dad. You're playing with them." I'm like, why would I bring him up here just to cut him loose and go crazy? Again, probably just perspective, but I'm witnessing parents like lose their kids because they're on their phones for 5 minutes, and now they look around and have no idea where their kids are. But again, that's just a value of mine, that when Cohen was born, I kind of I don't want to be on my phone. I want to hang out with Cohen. And obviously he's old enough now to do a lot of things on his own at home, and I get to watch him, I get to interact with them. So obviously my values to my goals have changed, and I have enjoyed every moment of it. Now that it's nicer out, a year or two ago, an author that I follow on social media, there's a picture of 2 brain scans, and one of them was after an hour on your phone, and one of them was after a 20-minute walk. And like the happiness that the 20-minute walk brain scan showed was like, holy cow, that's a massive difference. So not only do I love just going for walks and getting out of the house with both of them now, I can see just the benefits to that and how enjoyable it is rather than sitting on my phone on the couch while Cohen just does whatever. But yeah, I obviously this chapter was massive for me because my values have evolved over the past just couple of years and not just the past decades. So I mean, I could talk about this all day long. I'm going to get to you guys and then I'll maybe come back to it myself, but I'll start with you, Rhonda. Anything you wanted to highlight with your personal goals kind of leading into, or your personal values, sorry, leading into what your current goals are?
No, nothing really earth shattering. I mean, I think for me right now, like personal goals, professional goals, like I don't, I think my values and stuff have maybe changed a little over the last, I mean, I was in the same job for 24 years, but I really think that I'm in a different place of employment now, but my values and my goals are still the same. Um, and then personally, I think, like some of my personal things as far as like when I work out, reading, doing different things, um, what I get done. Sometimes I like to look at those on a weekly basis as intentions rather than goals. Because sometimes I think goals, the word goal can feel kind of daunting. And it's like, okay, if this is what I want to do and I don't do it this week, then I'm a failure. So, like, it's my intent to go to this class 4 times a week at 6 a.m. and, stuff like that. So I don't know that I mean, obviously throughout my life, the values and goals have changed, but I don't know that they've changed a ton, just in the last few years or as a result of reading this.
Sylvie?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it allowed me to kind of look back and kind of examine how things have changed over time that nobody tells you about, right? When you start off, you're single, then you start dating, and then you get engaged, then you get married, and you're like, okay, it's less about me, more about we. Then you have kids, and it's like, actually, it's less about we, and it's more about them. And then as they age, you go from, we're taking complete control of you when you're a baby, or we're feeding you, or we're doing all this other stuff, to now my kids are driving and they're getting their own jobs, but there's also change with that, right? Like nothing, you think as soon as I get to one place, the next thing's done. Um, but a lot of the values, so to speak, just kind of change orders. They're not gone, as Rhonda alluded to. They just kind of shuffle through that top 10 playlist, so to speak, in my opinion. Um, there was one thing that was in the book in the chapter, and I highlighted it because I obviously agree with it, right? And you've probably heard it as biathlete. Like there are many options, but there are very few choices. Like when it comes down to it, it really isn't that hard to realize what you need to do versus what you'd like to do versus what the outcome's going to be, right? Like if your kid is crying, you're not going to go, hey, I need me time right now. You just deal with yourself, right? You go and you find out what's going on. You try to make that kid better. Um, and I think sometimes that gets lost to where it really is pretty simple. We just don't always have to like what the two options are. And then to kind of back up Rhonda's statement, you mentioned already the reason I'm not a huge goal guy is I think some people think that means you're done, right? Like I achieved my goal, therefore it's completed. It's check the box, move it over, and now I'm never going to do it again. Where these values and these decisions, whether it's working out, whether it's reading, whether it's eating healthier or spending more time with your kids, that hopefully is an ongoing process, right? That never has a complete finite end. Although during your time, you may have different ebbs and flows of ups and downs of your ability to do those things. Like you mentioned, Kyler getting sick, you got to take care of your kid versus go get that set of bench press in.
Absolutely. One more. What's that, Rhonda?
I also think, just to play off of that a little bit, and I think Sylvia, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. Um, I don't know, like in our youth, and when I say youth, I'm looking at college and high school. Um, I mean, I like the fact that the book talks about that you need to define your values and then define your goals, but I think we have a very underachieving population right now, and I think sometimes they don't they don't set goals because it feels daunting, and they are afraid they're afraid of failure, and I think that's possibly why they are underachieving, is because and some of it I think is because of parenting and not letting your kids fail. But I think that so many people are afraid of failure that they are afraid to, afraid to set any of that stuff, because then if they look at it and they didn't achieve it, then, are they any good at anything?
So my question for that, because I completely agree with you. I have fourth graders who are 10, so they're not even in middle school yet. But do you think you could connect that to expectations for themselves, or expectations that their parents have for them, or they think they have for them? I'm sure that has an effect on it. And I
I think
ask you
just
because you guys see high school and middle school kids every day. I see 10-year-olds that I even see 10-year-olds who I'm like, you're doing this because your parents have expectations and you're nervous that they'll be mad if you don't reach this, because academically, socially, athletically, I see it at the age of 10. So I can about imagine what you guys see in a gym on a daily basis.
I heard something the other day that I think ties into it. Like all of these things and information that are out there are great, but we're starting to wear these things as labels as to reasons why we can't persevere, rather than, hey, I, have trouble sleeping, so I'm going to take a nap later in the day, or I'm going to find a way to get my time in. And I just use sleeping as the example, so I didn't hit a lightning rod with what I was about to say. But it's one of those things that, Kyler, I think you're right. Like generations before us, whether it was me being a farm kid and I had to drive the stick shift truck at 13 because we didn't have a hired hand, right? And don't come after my dad because I wasn't, legal of age or whatever. But like some of the things we had to do out of necessity at
Hmm.
younger ages, and we were held to standards. I mean, you look back at the different world wars. Luckily, I was never around those, but I had relatives that were, I mean, the things they were doing at 18 years old, I can't imagine doing today at 40 something, right? Like, so I do think some of it is the standards been dropped. Oh, they're only blank years old. They can't do blank.
Definitely agree.
Where if you come in and see things with middle school kids, whatever, because this summer is the first summer I worked with middle schoolers other than my kids, right? And they're like, oh, how is Sylvie going to react to middle school kids as a college coach? And they bought into the standard just like I did. I was like, here's all we're going to do is effort. That's all I care about. You give me effort every day, life's going to be great. I don't care how fast you run, how much you lift. Just give me effort, do your best, and we're going to go from there. And I had a substitute coach come in and take one day because I had a meeting, and I come back, and my nephew, who was in the group, got mad at me to where he didn't tell me this. I got a call from my dad saying, you better apologize to your nephew. And I'm like, what's going on here? Now we're going full circle. But they actually want to have a standard held.
Hmm.
They like it when they get treated above what people think. And if you think back to yourself, I know I do. I liked it when dad treated me more like an adult, right? When I had, even though there was pressure, as Rhonda said, like you had the fear of, am I going to do something wrong as I'm driving the tractor or as I'm, uh, doing X, Y, or Z? You still liked the ability to do it.
Right. And you
And I
learn
think,
more from
yeah,
it.
and I think we have taken some of that away, and I'm guilty of it. I mean, I still mow my lawn because I like it, right? But there is no way my parents or my grandparents, et cetera, were even touching the lawnmower. Like I was 9 going out there. It wasn't what I'm doing right now.
That's why we had Kyler, is to mow the lawn.
Well, had I known that, Kyler, you can
This
come
is
over.
true.
Like
Had to
you
put
and
bricks on
Carter
the
and
seat
Hunter
so
can.
Jaron could do it.
Yeah, we did. We because the mower he wasn't heavy enough, so the mower would turn off. So we put cinder blocks on the seat so the mower so it wouldn't turn off when he
I
was.
know it's hard to believe that at some point in time, Jaron Olson wasn't heavy enough for something, but it was true. All right, as we welcome Maddie Lund into the conversation, I'm going to throw, and she can relate to this as well because she taught fourth grade for a number of years. But you guys talk a lot about, because you guys are up at Sanford Power, of course, with your middle school and high school kids. A thing that, I mean, I've even talked about this with my fourth grade team this year a lot, and the years past is, and I don't think it's just a Lincoln thing. I'm sure it's just the age group we have right now and the kids we have and everything that we've been talking about the last 5 minutes. But I've been super proud of my group this year because they want to try things. I've had groups in the past that, well, they come to conferences and they say, well, and their parents say, well, he wants to try basketball. I said, well, why don't you try it? Well, what if I'm bad at it? I said,
Mhm.
you're 10 years old. like, did you play it in P? Well, I played it in PE and I was really good at it. Like, so what's holding you back? So I've had groups that were super hesitant that I'm like, oh, they're super involved in sports, and they're not. They just talk about it. And then this year, I think I have 7 girls in volleyball, 3 kids and boys in wrestling. Like they want to do it, and I don't know if I had an impact on them because we've talked about it twice when I hand out the registration forms. But this group this year, big shout out to my group, because I also know 2 of my girls listen to this because they told me about it. But this group is they want to go out and do stuff. They're not like so super vocal, like, well, maybe I'm bad at it and we'll find out. But I said, how do you guys know if you like volleyball? Nobody cares how good at volleyball you are at 10 years old. Go do it and go hang out with your friends. So that's just what I see from a 10-year-old standpoint, because it's they're not to the point where they're figuring out, is this really something I want to do for the next couple of years, or are there other things I want to do? But I've been super happy to hear so many good things from the kiddos I have this year because they want to go out and try. Maddie, we've talked about culture a little bit, and we're talking a lot about values and how those lead to your goals. Anything from chapter 4, Maddie, that you want to throw in as you enter the conversation?
Yeah, like it was just really refreshing to just be reminded about how like figuring out your own values and kind of what is important to you as just like a human being, your own self, and how you can connect that to your profession and see how they align and how they might differ like as you just get more experience. I think even like reflecting, like I think at like the end of chapter 4, he like suggested like coming up with a list and just kind of like coming back to it and just kind of seeing what stays and what like is different. I know that like even like this year I've done a lot of reflecting about, my first 3 years in the classroom and just seeing like a change in some of the values that I didn't list, but I just know that they have changed due to my experience in the classroom, my personal, just like what I've been able to experience in my personal life the last even like year and a half to 2 years. And just like just stuff like that, which was just like really resonating to just know that that is a common practice and that your values and your priorities change as you get older. And so that's just kind of that just like really stuck with me. Not a whole lot to really add to that, but it was just nice to be like reaffirmed that, your priorities, your values, they change. They're not constant. Just because you set them now doesn't mean that that's how it's going to be forever. They can just flow as you grow in like the life you're meant to be in. So
The last piece I'll hit on in chapter 4 if anyone else has anything to chime in before we head to chapter 5, just some personal experiences that like didn't like blow my mind or blow me away, but definitely hit my brain, like that, like life is changing in a very positive way. Anybody who knows me knows I'm always up for going out with some friends for a while and just getting out of the house, having fun, whether it's hanging out with buddies or whether it's watching a game on the TV. But there's been times in the last year that I can even recall, like specifically, just being out with a number of friends and just kind of looking around, and not discomfort by any means, but just kind of the sitting there going, I'd much rather be at home just hanging out with my kids right now. And I say it in a positive fashion because I was never worried or nervous. Like, I'm here now, I have kids. Like, I can never go out with friends and have like fun, do my thing, whatever. But there's just been a few moments in the last year that like have had positive impact, like realizations more so, where you're sitting there going that there's other, like, I don't mind being here. I'm fine being here. I don't need to be out till 2 o'clock in the morning. That's definitely factual. But there's other people I'd rather be around right now. And it's, again, just that evolution of your values, who you want to be around. It's nothing against my friends because, like I said, I wasn't uncomfortable and I wasn't with people who made me uncomfortable. I wouldn't go anywhere with very many people who made me uncomfortable. But just a realization that I've experienced in the last year that I really wanted to share with the crowd. So, anybody else at all have any other thoughts they wanted to share on chapter 4 before we head to chapter 5? Nobody. All right, let us head to chapter 5. Chapter 5 is all about behaving your way to success. Um, a lot of what we've talked about kind of as coaches and teachers in a sense is I have a quote from page 117. In order to live in line with your values, you have to keep doing it. So there is that consistency piece that we just talked about that I know we keep coming back to highlight that Sylvie doesn't like goals, and that's kind of where it comes from. Is just sometimes it's hard to be consistent. Sometimes it's hard to just keep doing it. Things get in the way, life happens, changes happen. So I have several notes for chapter 5, but I'll start with Maddie since she just joined us to get her thoughts on some chapter 5. Maddie, anything you want to highlight as we start getting into chapter 5?
I mean, like, as you just kind of like introduced this chapter, it is so hard to like you said, life and just being consistent in your goals and your habits and your behaviors with, you know, how you're and how you want to just like, you know, reach those goals. And I struggle so hard, and especially in January and early February, with trying to like maintain and keep like those goals that I have for myself consistent in my behaviors and my mindset, just like really affect that. And I see a change in myself. And it's just like really interesting when you kind of get into a slum and you try so hard to just like maintain your routine, your attitude, your consistency, and you're in like a period of cold, dark, long days with not a lot of sunshine. You just don't have a lot of energy. I just see such a huge difference in like myself when like the sun comes out, which I feel like we all do, but it's just like really hard to like I struggle so much just telling myself to just like be consistent and like keep this routine that I've set even when I don't want to, you know, just like that mindset of like I want to take a break. I just need that breather to just like reset myself, reset that my mindset. And like your how you know behave during that and your attitude during that is just I think um I don't know, it that's your driving factor. And so it's just reading this chapter after kind of myself having kind of like a um harder January and early February that I've had, I think recently, was just like really it was a good reminder to just like know that like I feel now the sun's out, spring is around the corner, you know, like I can do hard things, I can push through it, I can, you know, maintain my like my routines. And it's all about like my behavior and my attitude. And if I, you know, like if I my behavior is like declining, then I'm just like I don't feel I internally don't feel good. So like how can I feel good all the time, you know, inside and out, and like whatever my goals are, my behaviors are. So really just chapter 5 was just like a good reminder that, you know, you can just once you've developed them, you can just like stay with them. And even like habits, some eventually you don't think that they're habitual. You just, you know, they'll just become second nature, and still in that process. But I'll, you know, we all get there whenever we're meant to. So
I think my teacher brain loves chapter 5 and just makes my brain happy in general. Massive piece of that is the aggregate of marginal gains, and that just goes along with being consistent. And when we get into this time of year where we take our middle of year data and we implement it into every aspect we can to assist and guide our students into as we get into the end of the year, that consistency piece, knowing that you are doing enough as a teacher, regardless of what the rest of the world's trying to tell you, or if you have those bad days and icky days where am I doing enough? If you stick with that consistency, things will just slowly take care of themselves. This I have from the book, if you make the tiny improvements over and over and over, eventually it adds up to a massive improvement. So that's one thing that I definitely share with my students, not just throughout the whole school year, but especially this time of year, because fourth grade is massive with mathematically with multiplication. So when they think we do this every day, what's the purpose of this? What's your intentions? Why do we have to keep doing this every day? This is kind of the time of year when some of those kids start picking up the repetitiveness and why we're doing it, because it starts to click a little more for kids who might have struggled with it in the fall. Especially reading month right now, my class goes bonkers with reading month, and so does our school. But I'm starting to see more and more kids start to find a purpose in reading, because they're driving themselves to actually find books that they want to read. So reading's becoming more enjoyable. But that again goes with, if you do these tiny things over the course of X amount of time, you're going to eventually, hopefully, see improvements. And again, this is kind of the time of year where more and more kids start catching on to, I feel myself improving, and I'm starting to enjoy learning because it's making more and more sense, because the purpose is finally there, and I'm starting to realize that. So again, I think chapter 5 is makes my teacher brain happy, because this is like how we plan this out as teachers, and our students, many of them start seeing that and feeling that at the same time, which usually makes the teacher's life a little easier, because now it's starting to click a little more. So, Sylvie, what do you have? Any thoughts on chapter 5?
It reminded me of a book I've read in the past called Atomic Habits, because in that you mentioned little things over and over, but also kind of like reframing your thought process. Like, I have to go work out today. I have to read a book today. It's, I'm Mike Silbernagel. I'm someone who reads. I'm Mike Silbernagel. I'm someone who works out. It no longer becomes that daunting thing that you have to do. It becomes part of what you do every day, which backs up my statement of feelings lie. Right. So, page, of course, I clicked the wrong button here. 123, behaviors really have to supersede your feelings. And sometimes you have to behave your way into feeling it versus feeling your way into behaving. Right. Because your feelings are going to cloud your judgment. I always tell someone when they talk about not wanting to work out a certain day, is just do the warm up. And I've yet to have someone stop the warm up and not finish the workout. Right? Like, just read a page. Well, once you read a page, you probably read the chapter, right? Like, the key is to get started and make yourself realize that you can do the things that 5 minutes ago you didn't feel like doing. That's why I love having my garage gym, because the only thing stopping me from training is the door. I don't have to get in the car. I don't have to drive, etc. And I think it's the same thing. Well, I want to DoorDash food. Well, start making some food, chop up some vegetables, see what happens. I guarantee you're going to end up making the meal on your own. Um, because I think right now we get really caught up in what our feelings want to dictate us, when reality, once we get doing whatever that task is, 9 times out of 10, it's going to change our mind.
Rhonda?
I think I love the make the bed story, or make your bed story.
I should have bet money that this would pop into this conversation. A lot of money would have been put on the line, too.
My kids made their bed every day, or we did not leave the house. But I mean, it's just those little things to me that are just habits that you just do. And if you just do it, it's not that big of a deal. And I love the part where he said, then if you had a bad day and you come home, your bed's already made and then you're going to feel better. But yeah, just those little things that, and when Maddie talked about the darkness of January and February, I think that's when it's most important to keep doing those little things, because that's what gets you through those dark mornings. Like, even like the last 2 mornings, driving to work, like on Wednesdays I go in a little earlier, and man, it was light out already when I was driving to work at 10 to 7 yesterday. It's not going to be next week because we're turning the clocks ahead, but it'll be lighter at night longer. So like today when I got home, I went out for a walk and stuff, and it was just like, but a month ago when I got home, it was dark. So you couldn't go out and walk because it was icy, and you'd fall and hit your head. So, but I think just, yeah, those, and I like the behavioral stuff that Sylvie said. It's like they're, and that's exactly it. It's your feelings, and like our society is such a we want instant gratification all the time. And, when that alarm goes off for me to get up and go work out in the morning, I could turn it off and go back to sleep for a while. But if I do, I know when I do get up and get in the shower, having not worked out, I'm going to be pissed and I'm going to be cranky all day long. And so it's, that it's not immediate gratification getting up, but once you get up and get going, I mean, it's just a habit you have to develop.
Yeah, the
And
habitual part of this, we did a book study as a staff last year. I know I've mentioned it before, but big shout out to Christy Carson, Daniel Weiss for leading um, a huge book study that had a very large impact on me, especially as I had children and I don't really have an option to stay in bed. I need to get my butt out of bed and now I get two kids ready with Kaylee, but I think apart last year, and I know Maddie, we probably both get PTSD with the word portable in a sentence. But I know last year in the first couple of months, I was getting massive headaches in the afternoon, and I know I told Rhonda, I was like, I get these headaches in the afternoon, and I've never experienced this ever. It's horrible. And part of it was the lighting. So I literally did not turn the lights on in my room. I would just lamp the heck out of it, and it helped. But I also realized like I wasn't drinking enough water. I never drink enough water, so that is always going to be an issue. But again, um, a couple of weeks ago, I'm at school. It's about 2 o'clock, and I'm just like I just felt off. I didn't feel sick, but the headache came back. And there's my big water bottle on my desk waiting for me. I'm like, it's a sign. So I go throw some ice in it, and I felt completely better by 2:15. So you get those back in your head, sort of thing. So trying to build those habits, even if you go away from them for X amount of time, if you build those into your mind and you're going, something's off, we need to go back to something. That helped me a lot last year. We also, part of the book we read last year, had a massive part in it called just, if it takes you less than 2 minutes, just do it. So again, when I wake up, it's called go do the stupid dishes, go drink the stupid water. So you're supposed to label everything with stupid, even if you say it out loud, because it triggers your brain to just go do it. Like, call it stupid so it rings in your brain to go do the stupid dishes, go take a stupid shower, go brush your stupid teeth, drink the stupid water. So I think that, again, I say it out loud sometimes at home, like, I gotta go do the stupid dishes, and Kaylee are like, whoa, like, it's not that hard of a task. But um,
have you
but I
guys,
think that's definitely helped, just the mental trigger of just throwing that word into a sentence. Sometimes I have to keep myself from saying it at school because students will really think something's going on. But what's that?
a few years back, there was a short little video, and there's a little book that goes with it. It's called Eat That Frog.
Yep.
And it's basically like every day eating the frog is doing the things that you least want to do. And it said you should start every day with eating the frog first, and then the rest of the day will go better. And that's kind of one of the things, like with lifting, that I've started doing is when I start a workout, after my warm up, which I'm terrible at, I always do the exercise that I hate the most, because then if I run out of time, I've done it. And it's usually what you hate to do the most is what you're not good at. So yeah, the eat the frog kind of comes into play there.
I hate to tell Sylvie, but if I did the workout I like to do least, I have not done reverse inchworm since I was in his weight room. So never again will that appear on my sheet. So
The amount
anybody
of times,
else?
Kyler, I've had someone tell me they're not going to do something, and then years later tell me they did it. So I'm taking this as an omen. It's going to happen.
I said it to Sherilyn Blackshirt, and she's like, "Oh, don't even say that out loud." I'm like, "Okay, you too, perfect." I said it my last day. I said, "This is the last day I ever do a reverse inchworm. I've never gone back. Never. I don't need that in my life. I can do other things." So, a few other notes. Maddie, anybody else have any other things to add to chapter 5? I know I have. Just going back to just keep doing it. It's not about, I have a quote, it's not about what has been done or what might be done. It's about what we do moment to moment. And again, I think that connects a lot to our school day. And Maddie can attest to the 900 things that we are required to do on a daily basis. And then another thing's thrown at us and we're like, where do you want me to do that? So again, when we, a lot of intervention groups, a lot of small groups, a lot of just getting to as many kids as we can on a daily basis, instead of looking at it bigger picture, what can I do in this moment? Who can I impact in this moment? What group can I impact with this moment? Sort of thing. And I'm very fortunate to work with a lot of great people that know what we need to do in the moment and know what data we need to look to make an impact and not just be going through the motions on a daily basis. So anybody else have any other thoughts, reflections they would like to share for chapter 5? Nothing at all. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining again. I looked at kind of mapping this out, and I wanted to try to sneak it into 4 months time with 4 meetings, but I think we might have to go 5 because sneaking like 3 or 4 chapters into one could be a lot going on. I'm also reading the Let Them theory right now. If no one has started that yet, it's phenomenal. It's very good for your brain. Go check out the Let Them theory is great. So, all right. Once again, thank you all for joining me. Thank you to listeners and viewers for joining us again. I know I have a few students who informed me the other day that when is another book study episode coming out? They caught me off guard because I had no idea they listened to it. Like, well, I watch it with my mom. I'm like, okay, so you're not just in your bed at midnight on your iPad watching? Okay, good. All right. Thank you guys for joining, and we will see you next time.